Alright, how's it going, you guys? It looks like we're all prepped up. I'm sure people will start to kind of jump in as we go along. Just to introduce, again, real quickly, just as a... It's been a while, actually, probably a couple weeks already, doing a live stream here with Peter Han, and we're going to be going into just a quick live stream of a drawing going on to this front faceplate, back faceplate now, of the PlayStation 5 actually. So people were commenting that the last one I had done, the other side of it, they would like to have seen, so I figured, you know what, I still had the back side to kind of go into, so I'm going to use this one as a live session to go draw on top of. So as you can see, faceplate is just kind of on its own. The pens I'll be using is the Pigma FB made by Sakura. And I did prep this surface already. You can kind of see that actually there is a bit of a sheen to it. You can kind of see some scuff marks. But that's because of what I used to essentially prep the surface. And for this faceplate for the PS5, what I did was I used basically like what is that? The nail polish remover, that kind of stuff. What was the name of it? Can't remember. But essentially, that's the solution that I had, which you then kind of wipe down the surface of this. And actually, I use it for a lot of my shoe customization. Let me turn down the music a little bit as well. Give me 1 second. I don't want it to be obtrusive a little bit here. So what I used for a lot of my kind of shoe customizations, I use stuff like this. This is made by a company called Angelus. It's actually a leather preparer, but it's also just a deglazer. So I just use stuff like this to essentially strip off the top coating on the plastic. Without it, essentially any kind of ink that you use, it'll be the ink will bead on there, and it won't really sit on top. So it's really easy to kind of smudge and stuff like that. So I did prepare it. I already kind of like wiped it down with that solution. I also wiped it with basically just alcohol real quickly to kind of clean up anything else that's on there. I'm just double checking to see if there's anything on this smudge wise, and it seems okay. But once I draw, what's going to happen is that I will be coating it with a top coat, and then I'll spray it down with a satin or semi-gloss, and that will even out the entire surface. So we're going to go into this right away, might as well. I do have people over here streaming for the Instagram, so again, appreciate you guys stopping by just to check it out. Most of my questions I'll be replying to will be mostly on Twitch. So if anybody wants to ask questions, you might want to jump on to the Twitch side, please. On Instagram, you can watch, but unfortunately, it's on the angle where I can't really see what's going on, so I'm just letting it stream live so you can kind of watch what's happening. On the other side of the faceplate, I had done kind of like a samurai, warrior kind of thing. So on this side, I'm going to be doing like a Oni demon. The Raijin is what I wanted to do. He's a drummer, the thunder god. So I already had a general idea as to what I wanted to do with this guy. So I'm going to put him in here. And we'll just establish placement. I'm just kind of visualizing first where I'm going to put him. His head's going to go right about here. Shoulders to arm. Arm this way, down legs. So we'll start right about here. So already I'm feeling a slight amount of difference because in the first iteration I did prep it. I wiped it down with alcohol, but I felt like it wasn't enough to really get that surface prepped well enough to have taken the ink. But this feels much better. Alright, so right here, as I've kind of started, I've already established his main horn, his brow's going to be here, nose down to the head, shoulders, arm going up this way. So just this alone is enough for me to kind of feel out if it's going to, essentially work well for me. And the angle, the orientation feels good, so I'm going to keep moving forward. So what would have happened if I didn't like it? Well, I would keep moving forward and trying to problem solve it and make it work. And accept the fact that it's not going to be exactly what I want, but that's okay. Hold on 1 second. You know what? I'm also going to zoom in a little bit here with the camera so I can see a little bit better on Twitch stream. I know it's been forever since I've streamed, but for one thing, I've just kind of been on vacation for the holidays and stuff like that. And then when the holidays kind of finished, I was still kind of like, you know what, I'm just want to take a little bit of a longer break. And class hadn't started just yet, and it was nice to kind of have just a little bit of peaceful time to kind of just hang out and do my own thing. But now that we're into the new year and classes have begun, starting to work on some new stuff, I figured it'd be nice in time to kind of jump back into this. So again, this is going to be like a Oni Raijin demon. And this will be the companion piece to the front faceplate that I have for the PlayStation 5 on the other side. And again, this is just the plastic case. I just kind of, you can pull it off and I'll intermittently check the Instagram size just to see if there's any questions. But I know there's going to be the typical ones, and I'll kind of just repeat that once in a while. But the tool that I'm using to draw with right now is the PIGMA FB Sakura pen. Here's on Instagram, PIGMA FB. And this Raijin demon guy is going to face this direction, but his arm's going to go that way. So just keep building this out. Let's put his shoulders down over here. Yeah, some people that are jumping in right now are asking about the plastic cover for the PS5. Like, you know, do I do something to it? Do I top coat it? Actually, I strip it. I strip it away. So any kind of top coat, I will use basically like a deglazer, basically a nail polish remover, and I'll wipe it down with a paper towel, and that will strip away any top coat that's on this one right now. If I don't do that, any kind of ink or pen that I would use on this, the ink would just bead and it would sit on top of it, and it wouldn't really dry properly. And then once I had done that, all I have to do is let it dry. I just kind of wiped it down again with alcohol. And the pen that I'm using, as people are asking again, is that PIGMA FB made by Sakura. This pen I like mainly because it has a nice amount of range of line variation for a stroke. It also has a water resistant ink into it. So I mainly use it for a lot of my watercolor pieces. And for this, it would be ideal because, again, once it dries, it sets in real nicely. Typically, again, after this, I will be doing a top coat to kind of let it finish and settle in. And then I'll also spray it with a fixative to really get it kind of locked in, settled. Right now, this is just the preliminary of how everything is going. I just want to check the screen if it looks okay. This is going to be the back side over here. And as you'll notice, I really won't be like turning this as much, but I will tilt it once in a while just so that people can see it on the screen camera better. I'll just intermittently check on Instagram to make sure it's faced the right way. So I do get a couple questions on Twitch, which I'll try to answer as best I can. Anything I get as a question, do understand that, again, everything here is just based on my opinion, my thoughts, so take it for what it is. Question I'm getting right now is, am I liking the new PS5 controller? I actually am a lot. It's probably the most revolutionary thing about the console, honestly. it's the most next gen aspect about it. Yeah, they can bump up the tech and all the stuff around it when it comes to the technology inside the PS5. But man, that controller is something else. I'm sure some of you who are interested in gaming and stuff like that may have read about it, but when you actually get a handle on it and feel it, it's crazy. It's only just the beginning, so I'm assuming once a lot of studios really get a handle on it, really know how to integrate it, that haptic feedback into their games, it's going to be a game changer. Do I think drawing live for people is harder? Kind of, not so much. I think the only reason why it would be harder is because sometimes it can take a little bit longer. As I'm, drawing, usually I'm like talking or answering questions, and I can talk and draw at the same time. But sometimes I kind of have to halt and think about it, or like I said, process the information just a little bit. So it can stall me ever so much. But in terms of the actual drawing itself, it's not difficult. And this is the Oni demon in the Japanese folklore, the Raijin, who is a thunder god who plays those drums in the clouds. I'm gonna just double check that this is all dried out. So once I get to this point, I don't want to smear it, so I don't want to move my hand across it. So I'm gonna just make sure it settles in a little bit. I'm gonna try to keep my hand away from it, so I lengthen the distance of the control so I can actually reach a little bit further, and then I just keep drawing this way. So I just missed a couple of questions on the chat on Twitch. Let me just see. Um, Question from Undaunted Snake is: do you feel that it's bad to start with brush pens? Me personally, I use fine liner tools and don't like the shaky lines of brush pens. But I know that just as just an aspect of being a beginner. I know it's just an aspect of being a beginner, but would it be a good idea to start using brush pens more? Honestly, with any sort of tool sets, whether it's traditional or digital, there's no point in which there should be a time to start or the right moment to begin on playing with something. The only way to get more control and to understand how to use that tool set better is to start now, and play with it, regardless of what the expectation or the outcome and the finish is supposed to look like. The idea is that you just want to understand the base mechanics and the muscle memory that you need to have to use that thing. So some people can say that, oh, you shouldn't use it because you should really build your skill sets in other mediums first and then move into that stuff afterwards. There should be a priority as to where you emphasize your energy and mileage into something, but that doesn't mean that you can't also play with brush pens if you want to, so go for it. What do I think of forced drawing? Tokyo Draws, I have never heard of a forced drawing class. So if you can give me a little bit more information about that, I'll try to think about it. But if I don't know it, I can't give an opinion, unfortunately. Did you have any standout art school classes? Well, I went to the Art Center College, University in Pasadena when I was, in my 20s. And so that's the place I went to educate myself within art design, traditionally, digitally. So that helped dramatically, of course, in terms of who I got to meet, who I got to hang out with, and the networks and the friends that I built, the instructors that I had, the mentorship that I was able to gain. Dramatically important. Without it, I wouldn't be where I am now. Is it for everybody? No, not necessarily, but it definitely did work out for me. I was letting that dry out a little bit, so yeah, it's sticking, so it's not bleeding way too much. There's a little bit of ink still on top, so I don't again want to smear it. There's a little bit of a smudge right there, so that's okay. It's not too much. And keeping my hand clear away from the drawing. I have like crazy necklace and bands and things like that around his neck and his arm. First thing I want to do is just line the entire thing, get the overall sense of positioning, pose, drawing composition, or whatever the case is. And then I'm going to go back after all that and start to kind of punch my darks, some additional details, hatch away at certain things, block in some darker value areas, contrast and whatnot. So I don't necessarily want to go too far into the dark areas first just yet. So I also don't want to over hatch or get the fine details initially either. Even though this can be heavily detailed already, I want to be careful of going too far with it. And we have a person here from India, and appreciate that, thank you. And the question is, when will I ever visit India? Well, of course, right now visiting anywhere is kind of impossible. But would I like to be able to visit India? Absolutely, for sure. I've had number of students that have joined my online classes from India and have done fantastic. There's a lot of great movement and energy in terms of wanting to grow as artists and designers from India at the moment. So I've been enjoying seeing just the growth pattern, the enthusiasm, and the people who have been very open to learn coming from there. And this has been very international so far, not just India, but also different parts of Asia, definitely a lot of parts of Europe. So definitely things are changing quite a bit. Hopefully in the near future, maybe in another year or two, I'll be able to travel more easily. I don't think traveling is going to really happen until 2022, honestly, but we'll see. Okay, let's get the bottom portion of it. By the way, people that are on Instagram watching, again, it's not that I'm avoiding the questions, it's just I'm not really looking at where the questions are. So if you do want to ask questions, what you can do is just jump on free to my Twitch stream and ask questions there. I look over once in a while if I do catch something. Question was how to join your online classes. Well, if you just follow me on social media, on Instagram, I post about it. We're in session right now. We just started our first week, and we'll be finishing in March. Next session will start up, I believe, in May or so. May or June. This is this cloth kind of skirt that he's going to be wearing over here. And as a thunder god, I want there to be like this electricity, kind of electric lightning bolt dragon behind him. Initially I thought about putting the drums on there, but it just wouldn't look right, I think, in terms of where it's going to be placed, in terms of how I positioned him. I think putting a dragon behind him would be better. Toki Draws is saying, force is some kind of drawing method about being aware of gravity in your figure, so I was wondering if that was an opinion on it. Oh, it's an interesting thought, or interesting terminology about being able to describe how to put figures in weight. Force drawing I never heard of, honestly, but I do understand what you're talking about. The idea of gravity of the pose and the figures, weight in space. That's a very, obviously necessary thing for us to be able to capture, to create very nicely established but also well-drawn figures. So there's a lot of artists that are able to capture that really well. For me, I actually talk about this distinctly about one specific artist, which is Heinrich Clay, who was around from the late 1800s, early 1930s, 40s, is when he passed away. He was a German artist, illustrator, did a lot of pen work, and in my opinion, he captures gravity really well. Weight of the figure, composition, interaction, push and pull, but also motion, movement of the line. How quickly do my one-on-one slots fill up? Usually as I put them up. My 2 slots right now are filled, so I'm going to be talking to those people hopefully in the next week or so. And I'll be putting up 2 more slots hopefully after that in the following week. What he's asking about is one-on-one slots on my... I have a Shopify store which I sell my registration for classes, and I do offer one-on-one times for an hour, and that could be for talking about anything, about your... Maybe it's a portfolio review, it's about feedback, it's about questions about education. Anything you need my time for an hour, you can have, essentially. But I don't necessarily always post when it's up. You just kind of check, once a week or so, and hopefully it's up there. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Any books I'm reading these days? I've yet to still finish the this one book. Where is it? This one here. I started it. I'm still about halfway through. This is the Empire of the Summer Moon. It's a fantastic book about the native tribes, the Cherokees, not the Cherokees. I'm sorry, the Comanches. Do you also write stories for comics or manga ideas? And for you, what comes first, writing or sketching? Sketching first, usually. After I create an image, a drawing, a situation, or scenario, I'm able to generate a story from that. That's how my first graphic novel was created, using the blacksmith. So I drew the character first, and then from that drawing, it just germinated more illustrations and images, which captured the attention of people, which, obviously generated interest and enthusiasm, and it encouraged me to create more of it, and I then created a world from that. From there, I then started to decide upon, obviously, doing a comic, and from there, I started to go into the thumbnail process and writing as I go. Sorry, Instagram, you can't see it. I'm gonna move it over here a little bit. Let me, well, no, you guys are fine on Twitch where you are. Chips Cartoons ask, what is the mistake you most commonly see people make within their art? For example, things like rushing or over detailing, and those are typical things that people don't necessarily, it's not a mistake, it's just more of a common draw of a pitfall, right? Something that they are really attracted to, detailing or trying to get things done really fast. But common mistakes definitely would be about education, about how they're learning. I speak about this in my classes, but the way I kind of label it, and I'll explain it here, is I call it the shopping list form of classes. What I mean by this is you want to learn something educationally in a technique for art or design, right? It could be about painting or drawing or design, and you find out the different schools that are available that might have classes that offer that kind of information. So it could be, let's say, an online school or a local school or university, whatever the case is. And what most people and young people will do is that they'll ask questions, of course, and research and find out what kind of classes they can take. And what they'll do is generate a list, a shopping list of classes that they have to go for. And what they'll do is they'll take a class and they'll mark it off saying, I've taken that one. Perspective. Oh, I got to take anatomy? Take that one. Oh, head drawing. I've taken that one. Dynamic sketching, the class I teach. Taken that. So they go from one class to another moving forward, yet not really understanding that taking it sometimes even just once is not enough to really grasp the information, or also in the fact that if you don't carry through the mileage beyond the class, where you say, I've taken the class, I've gotten as much as I need to, I'm going to focus on the next thing, I don't have to worry about the other stuff anymore. So for example, you could take a drawing class and all of a sudden you go to a painting class and you don't really use your drawing or draw as much on your own. That's a huge problem because you're just moving from one stepping stone to another, yes, which is an obvious logical movement towards education, but you're leaving the stuff you have learned from before behind. You're not carrying it through nor marrying it to the stuff in your present education. So what do people say normally? Oh man, I'm rusty now. I haven't drawn in months or I haven't painted in months. I got to go back and like recycle again, where you should have been working on that while you were doing it. So then there's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's a loss of education because you're not necessarily incorporating the things that you're learning into the next sessions of things, because you treat them all very separately. Painting is painting, drawing is drawing, figure is a figure, drawing cars is drawing cars. So once you fall into that kind of like, again, mindset situation, it takes forever to learn. So that's, I would say, one of the main mistakes I would see. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope it did. Good luck to you, Journey Art. Question from Two with Heavy Pepper is, when I draw, I tend to hold my pencil and pen closer to the point as if you were doing something like this. And sometimes I feel like I probably apply too much pressure, which you will. I've tried holding my pencil higher, like that back to here, but I lose dexterity. Of course. What exercise would you improve dexterity in your opinion? Of course, the idea is that no matter what, eventually, you're going to get used to it. Okay, so if you find that holding it a bit further back is uncomfortable to draw with, at first it is, but in time, as you play with it more and draw more, you will become more accustomed to that position. Now, of course, what are some typical things? You just draw, right? Now, there are obviously drawing exercises of like line work and drawing ellipses or whatever methods. And again, the class that I teach is primarily about that. And I don't want to try to sell the class right now. That's not the whole point. But the idea is that there are things that you can do to increase dexterity, which is about exercises, the repetition of movement. But I would agree that I used to hold it very close to the nib as well too, but you would also grip very tightly. If you get any kind of white knuckles, you gotta relax that grip. And also then you can't really see where you're going because your pen is hidden by your hand. So holding it a little bit further back gives you a bit more clearance of view, and you don't necessarily have to worry about pressure because here is going to give you a bit more balance of movement. Further back is too gestural and you don't really have the control that you need. Too far close to the nib, again, it's too much tightness. So something like in the middle is what I prefer. What type of tone paper do I use when using alcohol-based markers? I use the Strathmore brand paper, which is a little bit thinner, but I just use one side, or the Cottonwood Arts books. Okay, so the only figure is relatively there, actually. He's almost done. What I want to do now is actually incorporate the dragon, who's going to be up here, coming this direction. He's going to be like a lightning, thunder dragon. He's more of an effect, so I don't want to incorporate way too much like heavy essential details into him just yet. I want to make him more shape oriented. Yeah, it's the Cottonwood Arts sketchbooks. You'll find them online. You can buy them through their website. The one that I use is the Earthbound. It's a spiral bound book. It's 10 inches by 10 inches. It's brown tone paper. It's a good sketchbook. I use it mainly for a lot of my classes. Put some effects of sparks coming off of him. Again, for those of you that have no idea what I'm drawing on, this is the PS5 faceplate. It's on the other side of it right now. I prepped the surface of it using a nail polish remover to kind of make it less slick. And then I also wiped it down with some alcohol. I'm using the Pigma FB Sakura pen, permanent pen. Not permanent, waterproof, more waterproof pen to draw on top of. And yes, I will be top coating it to make it more secure and permanent. We're just going to be going for maybe, well, up until when I'm done and finished. We're right now about half an hour in. So this is about a half an hour sketch drawing. Question from John Ye is, how do I feel about the importance of art history? I think it's very important, but you don't recognize the importance of it, of course, when you're much younger. And I'm definitely in one of those situations where back in my college days, we would have to take art history classes. And yeah, I try to do my best, but of course, it's really hard to pay attention to, learn about things like the history of art and where it came from, and all the way from the back to like cave drawings into the, the Baroque period to the Renaissance period to whatever the case is, Victorian, and seeing all the transitions and evolution of art. And again, it wasn't just as interesting to me, but today and nowadays, history, of course, is far important, and I like reading about it. But when I was younger, in my early 20s and teens, it's like, yeah, whatever, I just want to draw, So that was my mentality. Okay, starting to get things going here. A couple of the questions. Sorry, I had to scroll back a little bit. Do I prefer hot or cold pressed paper? I prefer cold pressed paper. Hot press is more like tissue paper. It's really absorbent. Not a huge fan of it. Question, this is Michael Vu, and I took your dynamic sketching class back in the summer of 2020. Welcome here. Recently started sketching with you with your method again, back from long journey of painting, and recently I had a breakthrough where I started to be able to draw without putting down any guidelines. Awesome. And I was surprisingly pretty successful and accurate compared to drawing with guidelines and markers. You have this kind of breakthrough as well when learning. Of course, when you practice enough in one thing, you become very familiar with a certain method, idea, or visualization technique, and you're able to incorporate it. And again, there's no way to predict when that kind of like the light bulb will kind of go off on your head and understand that, hey, this actually is something that I can actually control. Let's say drawing without guidelines. And again, drawing with guidelines is a very good thing. You always should use it to some degree. But what happens is that you're able to minimize how much guidelines you got to use to be able to visualize on the page as to what you want. And so that's what you're essentially doing, is that you're able to see it better. See, right? Observation, view, visualization. So that's what you're getting right now, Michael. How much? And sorry if I'm speaking really fast, so I'll try to slow down a little bit. It's just that when I get online and I start to draw, I get a bit of this, spike in energy. So sometimes I tend to I'm processing information, 100 miles an hour right now. So that's why I speak really quickly, because I have so much in my mind as I'm also visualizing on the page here. So I will try to slow down as we go. How much should a beginner draw daily to be as good as me? And as good as you might think I am, and I'm not going to say that, I'm someone who's just starting. Of course, I've put the time in of decades to draw, and I'm confident enough in what I can do. But I do also register and recognize that there are people out there that are far better than me. And regardless of that, everyone's at different levels. So how long would it take to get to the point where I'm at the level of confidence I'm having? There is no set time that I can give you. There's no way for me to answer that question, because the path that I took is not the path you'll take. So you could actually get here faster than me, potentially. Vice versa, it could also take you potentially longer. There is no strict answer for that. And the idea is that your priority and attention should not be going into this in the first place. You can't be sitting there counting down the hours and the days or the years of hopefully getting to a point where you have the confidence to do what you want to do. It will get there without you even realizing it. You'll wake up one day and you start to look back on your work and realize, I'm actually in a spot where I didn't think I was going to be, let's say, a couple years ago. So you have to be patient with it. You got to give it time to let it just kind of flourish and naturally grow on its own. And your attention and priority should go more into having fun with what you're actually learning and enjoying it, doing it every single day. Where it's not about waking up thinking I should be practicing to get better, to hit that expectation of the position, but more of I just want to create because I want to create. Whether I get there or not, sooner or later, is not really the issue. And if that's not the issue, you won't be sitting there with the anxiety of trying to push yourself more and more and more and eventually burning yourself out, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, I just missed a couple of questions. I gotta keep scrolling down. I want to stay there present. So if I skipped a couple of questions there, I do apologize. But I'm gonna keep working here, and let me just establish a bit more on the drawing. And for those of you that are on Instagram that are watching that want to ask questions, you're gonna have to jump on my Twitch stream to be able to interact, because I am not reading questions on Instagram. It's just being streamed. Just go to Peterhanstyle on Twitch, and you can watch it free. And you can interact and ask questions there. Right here, there's a little bit of a slick area. I don't think I stripped away the top coat enough, so I'm starting to get a bit of beading on this part. Beading meaning the ink is starting to bead like water beads on the surface. So I'm gonna have to watch out for that. The only way around it is for me to kind of like, not press a little bit harder, but work more ink into it. And it should be fine. Let's see. A couple questions now from Twitch is do I have any tips on finding your own style? Is it okay for an artist to have 3 to 4 different styles in your opinion? So this is a question I get all the time on every single moment we stream, and it's fine. I don't mind the question. I think it's a logical question because most people are concerned about style. You feel like with a certain style, you're able to stand out, which makes you more attractive to clients or particular jobs or companies or whatever the case is. But honest truth, again, style should not be your priority. Style will come in time when you start to find your voice, which will take discipline and mileage to get there. Can you find it, out the gate? Some people can. I'm not saying that's not impossible, but that be the focus. Again, the question comes into the kind of the job you want to do. Based on the work is what really dictates that. If you want to work in the commercial industry of entertainment design, let's say like games or animation, then you're not going to essentially find work with your style because they're not going to hire you for your style. They're going to hire you for your adaptable skills in which you can then plug into their style, their brand, their shape language, their aesthetics, their design bible, right? So if I wanted to work at like Blizzard or Riot, I want to have to be able to match up to what they're doing in their studios. If I come in there saying this is my work and this is my style, can you hire me? They're going to look at it and say this is not what we do, this is not in the style that we have. No. So again, if you work in, let's say, illustration, book art or covers or your own graphic novel, then a style can matter because of course that's your story and your brand and IP. And that will take then time to eventually find and discover that your voice, much like eating food, you develop a taste on something. You like what you like. So no one can tell you what you like on things. And eventually you'll find it over time. But you can't rush it. And the only way to find style is to understand the fundamentals. Learn the foundations of the basics of the construction of how you draw and paint. And from there through observation, study through other artists, and being able to then play, eventually you start to find that voice. But there's no guarantee of it, of course. But that's essentially what you're trying to do. Do I feel like I have my own style? I would say within certain properties that I've created, I have a style for it. But like I said, this is now germinated after decades of drawing and creating things. Would I have been able to do it out of school? To a certain degree, but not to the level of confidence that I want to be able to go for, right? But again, it's a welcome question. The idea of should I find a style? Is it okay to have a style? Of course it's okay to have a style if you feel like you have one. And how do you then, judge a style? Well, you compare it and contrast with things that you like, things that you've seen, artists that you follow, people you work with, friends that you have, see what their aesthetics are like. And then you're able to now get a sense of like where you stand. Alright, so here is on Instagram, you can kind of see what's going on so far right now. I want to go back up to the top to the head of the dragon a little bit here and refine some of the little elements of details. Well, not way too much, but just enough. And then I'm going to start to plug in some darks on this Oni demon character. Not on the dragon, but mostly on the demon. Caesar Sketches is asking, I've been wanting to use brush pens. I was wondering, do you have any paper recommendations for brush pens? I feel like I tend to get a lot of feathering. Brush pens in terms of, well, it depends on how you use it. If you're using straight brush pen, honestly, any surface is fine. But if you're planning to dry brush with it, and dry brush can be done with the Pentel color brush pens, I would be using a fibrous paper, nothing too slick. I wouldn't be using things like vellum. Bristol can be okay, but anything with a little bit of tooth is really good. Even honestly, things like just regular copy paper, but I really like the Strathmore drawing papers. Those are really good. Sorry, it was a question from Fiery Moltag. Is sure you know of students who have nothing stopping them from just starting, but there's still resistance to just start, quote unquote. Why do you think that is, and how to overcome it? Sometimes it could be fear, right? Fear because of what you see around you, the expectation of it, and knowing that if you start, that what you're gonna get is not what you want. So to just start is not as easy as it sounds. There is a very heavy burden, a weight you're putting on yourself, and it's only you that is putting that weight on you. But there's the other side of it too, which is potentially apathy. You're just lazy, right? Now, I'm not saying that's what anybody here is. I'm just saying that you have to judge and read that for yourself. And how do you then overcome that? I think a big part of being able to overcome apathy or getting past this low energy feel is to have the right environment and the people around you to encourage you to keep moving. Sometimes you can't do it by yourself, and it's been the way for me too. I would need my friends or instructors or people that worked in the same kind of field that I did. So having that kind of environment, obviously continues to keep that ball rolling. That just starting quote unquote is always going to be there, but I'm able to overcome it faster and also understand how to read it quicker and rely upon the things that help me move past it. Right. Do I accept students internationally for my online classes? Yeah, absolutely. Just look on my social media. I do have a website on ArtStation that talks about some of the classes I have. I have a Shopify store where you can register and it gives you the schedules. I do have a morning class and an evening class on Pacific time. So wherever you are internationally, what that best fits your schedule, you can look at. But again, I'll be posting about it when the registration happens again in May. We are in session right now. Okay, most of the drawing is done at the moment. So I'm going to zoom out on Twitch just a little bit to show you the overall look of it. So this is the PlayStation PS5 backplate cover. Feels pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is go back into the demon and block in some darks. So let's go into a little bit closer now. Let's go back into the demon's head area. And I'm just going to really quickly again look at some of the questions. Thoughts on the Feng School of Design? I don't have a lot of thoughts because I don't really know what their classes are like. I've met Feng on a couple of occasions. I've had some students have gone to that school who said, relatively a good experience, but some, again, like I said, will have certain criticisms. But like I said, that's not my experience. So I'm not going to be able to say whether I feel like it's the best place to go to or the worst place to go to. All I know is that it exists. And through more research, maybe asking people that do either work there or have gone there is your best bet. But I really don't know much about the school in terms of its programs or its quality and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I can't really give an opinion on it. But as I said, it's just more word of mouth, right? So I'm going to the eyes and kind of like darkening some of the pocket areas. This is that Pentel Pigma, not Pentel, I'm sorry, the Pigma Sakura brush pen, FB, that I'm able to get some nice line variation, thick and thin. Let's see a couple of the questions here. What do you think about digital art work demands these days? I personally prefer traditional, but do you think to get a job I should focus more on digital pieces rather than traditional? You should balance the both. There's no moment where you should decide one needs to have more focus than the other. And you might think, well, I feel like I need the time to invest in one thing to get that good. Well, I think you should be able to balance both the analog and the digital at the same time. There's no reason why you can't work with both together. You can draw traditionally, take it into digital, clean things up, paint with it if you want to. So the idea is that you want to get familiar to both tools because they go hand in hand. And for me, it's not one preference or the other. I think they're all great tool sets. I use a lot of digital and I use a lot of traditional. So it also depends on the job. It depends on what I'm working on. But in most situations, I am going to side towards a digital side for client work because of the speed. For a lot of my personal work, it's going to be traditional. But again, like I said, it's all very much, given the opportunity. If you need to get a certain deadline, you'll make the proper choice. I feel like it's an interesting question maybe. I didn't read all of it, but I just read the beginning, which says, is it wrong to have the goal of becoming a great artist that everybody admires? Interesting question. I find that trying so hard to become a legendary artist master like Kim Jong-gi or Vincent van Gogh seems rather shallow motivation based on other people's approval. Well, aren't we all human? Don't we all seek some form of valid confirmation that what we are doing matters? That we want to have remaining stay, within people's memory or have certain effect or lasting appeal. We all want to have validation that we're okay, that we're good. And I think that's very normal. But of course, I think there's sometimes, an unhealthy level of that, and of course, a healthy level of it. What's an unhealthy level? Well, I think unhealthy levels of it is where you start to lose a sense of yourself, right? Where that becomes such a dependency of your thought, where you feel like that's the only thing that you need to be doing to be validated, to feel that you can be recognized, instead of having acceptance of who you are. And I think that's also just based on sometimes age, of where you are at your life and where you are at your stage of your moment. And I think we all at a certain age can think that way, because we feel like that's what's really going to make us popular or accepted, based on other forms of success that I'm seeing around me, and I'm using that as essentially the model, right? The standard. But I think, again, like I said, that's typical to what most, and we're talking about artists right now, will do. And I certainly did, right? So certain artists that I looked at, or even friends next to me, being somewhat envious. Like, man, I wish I could do what they did, because they're getting so much more response. I wasn't the best in my school, you know? I wasn't the best when I graduated, nor am I the best now. But eventually, that youthful or immature, what I'll say, as mindset, will start to erode and disappear, with more of you exposing to the working process of what you find favorable and also passionate to. And that will then trump any sort of like draw to the idea of just trying to be popular, or being, or getting the admiration in that way. And then something else will take it over, which is just through the passion of what you are doing for yourself. As it then draws attention, you're able to now fixate on that. Now, again, there's no guarantee that's going to happen, because even though you are passionate and putting all the time and effort into it, maybe nobody does respond, you know. And what do you do in that situation? You got to swallow that pill and keep moving forward. What else can you do, right? You can't force people to like your work. You can't force people to kind of respond in a way you want to. And that's another immature way of thinking. You can't change people, but you can obviously grow yourself. Not change yourself, but mature and accept who you are. I mean, that's how I think, right? But that's only an opinion, only an advice, so take it for what it is. What artist would you say contributed to your art drawing style? Here, I get the impression Terada, and very much Terada. To me, in my art center days, Katsuya Terada was a huge inspiration. I used to imitate and copy his work in my early 20s a lot, because I loved his line work, I loved his aesthetics, his painting style, all that stuff. Now it's more of a nostalgic kind of appreciation. I still love his work a lot. But to me, it's, I still gravitate to some of his work, but not all the time. But there's definitely elements, a DNA of his impression there still. Not only him, but many other artists as well too. We're going to keep moving forward here. Let me just kind of draw just a little bit, and I'll keep answering a few questions. I hope you guys will find any of this stuff I'm talking about somewhat helpful. As a reminder for anybody who's joining now, this is, again, just thoughts and opinions. Please do understand that I am not, anyone here to tell you what to do. I am just saying that these are my just personal, views on things. Of course, the more you ask these kinds of questions to others and artists and whatnot, you start to get the average opinion, and then you'll find your own path from there. As you can see, I'm starting to kind of punch in these darks. Let me just move this a little bit so you can see the light kind of like shines on the surface of it, so it's hard to see. So I do apologize. Let me hold it like this. Okay, a couple of questions are, what would you recommend for a 14 to 18-year-old high schooler? I hear not to worry too much and just have fun. And I think that's what most professional artists would say, because that's definitely what I did. I mean, what else can you do? I know that there's pressure from family potentially, or the things you see on social media, and all of a sudden the idea of competition and being able to keep up or catch up starts to take precedence. But definitely, it's so easy for us to say, oh, don't worry about it, just have fun. But in the moment of that age you're in it, it's so hard to think that way, because that is your entire world. It'll begin and end by that. That if I'm not where I need to be, and I'm not ready, life is gonna crash around me, so you're so worried and anxious about that, and it's so hard to let go of that part, and I recognize it. But here's the thing, you're going through the mud of maturing and growing and finding out who you are, and people can just say, yeah, have fun and just get to know what you're trying to do and discover it, let it just happen naturally. But do understand that I don't want to shield you from the pains and the struggles of growing. You have to go through it. And no matter what anybody says, that's not really an answer. And I know that you're not looking for an answer, but I'm also going to tell you that just go through this shit. It sucks. It's hard to know what you need to be doing, what you should be looking at, who you should be learning from, who are you, right? And somebody can tell you not to worry, but that can also sound condescending and like whatever the case is. But they're just trying to help you and keep you moving forward and keep a positive outlook to things. But not everything seems so positive all the time, and it's okay to feel that way. Go through it, you know, but feel it, compare it, understand it, register it, know who you are more from that, and as you then come out of it, you start to grow more and more, right? So I'm gonna kind of skip through a little bit here. I do apologize. Am I going to teach on new masters? There were talks about it, but not right now. Sorry, I have to keep pushing downwards again. There's a lot of questions, so if there's a couple that I missed, you can retype it later on. Let me just apply a little bit more drawing here, and then we'll come back to the questions. I'm just going to bump up the line quality a little bit now, line weights around the silhouette of the figure, just so I can separate it from the dragon, because there's a chaos amount of line going on. So a good way to kind of isolate this demon is to pump up that contrast and line weight around them. Okay. I'll come back to this top area later on. I'm going to keep working my way this direction. Alright, let's see some of the other questions here. One question was, there's always... Oh, this is a reply, looks like. Yeah, that's more of an opinion reply from Case 03. Question here from iBrew18 is, I am almost done with engineering, and for a fact I know I am not cut out for any sort of engineering jobs, apart from maybe web designing. I really want to be a part of the art illustration industry, so what advice will you give someone who, like you, is struggling with career choices? I mean, of course, it's advice, right? It's really about making a decision and not anyone else influencing you on that decision and you making that choice. I understand that getting advice and wanting to hear people's opinions to influence that direction, or at least not really influence, but more of give you the confidence to choose is what you're looking for. But you also have to go in there and decide if this is what I'm actually interested in doing and I see myself doing that for the rest of my life. You have to just really settle into that decision and go for it 100%. When it comes to any sort of skill set, right, it could be about learning within your educational background for engineering or for art and illustration. You can't just dabble if you want a career in it. If it's a hobby, that's one thing, but if you want to work and get paid to do this thing, you got to jump in 100% fully, because if you won't do it, the person next to you might. And all it takes is that one decision of just a change of mindset. And if you're unwilling to make that choice, saying that, well, I've been teaching myself to do this, I'm in this career, and I always wanted to do art, but I don't know if I can or not. But as you go back and forth like this, you'll never make that jump, and you'll never actually get to work in this field. Because what it requires is somebody completely committed and passionate about doing this. If you feel that this is your calling, that this is something that you can see yourself doing for the rest of your life, and I'm talking about you leaving engineering, and you're moving into this, and you see yourself only doing this for the rest of your life, then go for it. I know the concern is still, but I don't see myself maybe doing it for the rest of my life. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'll be successful. I don't know if I'll make money off of it. But those are the thoughts that will hold you back in any sort of endeavor, not being able to succeed, right? The fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being seen, right? Or the judgments that other people will have on you. They'll ask, why did you make that choice? Well, you should have been doing this. You'll feel like you've, taken a wrong decision. You feel like you've wasted time. But in this life, you can't keep moving forward with regret, And the thing about this is that the only way to find out is to try, and try 100%. If it doesn't work, there's, you got to be able to go in there and obviously, adapt and try to re-establish yourself or choose a different angle. And you can always start over with something else. But the idea is that at least you'll know, right? Now, by the way, I am not telling you to quit your engineering and go into art. All I'm saying is that you will have to make that decision on your own. All right. It's now starting to come along. Let's see, question here is, I'm having a hard time understanding the basics of shadows and how to apply it on my drawings. Do you have any simple explanation on the subject? Well, when it comes to shadows, which is values, and light, so understanding light is what's really trying to learn. Taking classes obviously will help you. Color and light study classes, painting classes, rendering classes, it's all about light. Besides that, what could you do? Well, you will study from observation. Now, what would you want to study? Primitive forms, boxes, pyramids, and whatever shapes you can scrounge up, even everyday still life around you. Set up your own little studio on a table with your own light system and find out, well, how does light react to this object? If I hold it closer, further away, from a top shot, from a side angle, from behind and front, where does the light and the shadow move? Take your own photographs from that. Use them as references to be able to say, if I have a rounded cylindrical form and I took, let's say, a tube, put a light on it, how does that light and the shadow work? I can use that information and plug it into something like this. An arm right here is just a cylindrical form. You might see muscles and details on the surfacing, but I'm seeing a tube with another tube, right? All right. I want us to keep moving forward or down this direction towards his legs. I got to be careful with the arm because if I continue to really strengthen this dark too much, it'll get lost into this area. So I'm going to go away from the arm, back into the section, get that nice kind of cast shadow into the lower part of the skirt and the fabric. Darken all this up. Not being afraid to lose details, grouping shadows together. So the arm now stands out a bit more. A question from Uncle Stump is, do you have some of your early sketchbook works? If so, would you ever show those early works? I would show them, and I do have them. Especially from my college days. I don't really have a lot from before art center, college, like in my high school years and stuff like this. I don't really have a lot of those kind of books. Honestly, I have no idea what happened to them. Obviously, I was living with my family and my parents at the time of high school. I'm sure those books might be somewhere, but honestly, my parents were never really good about archiving my work, so those honestly might be gone. I do have a pile of old drawings from high school that I still have in my room, and I know exactly where they are. And yeah, I would show them, and actually, I've actually even posted them on my Instagram, so they're on there. But they're definitely probably from months and months and months ago. So I'd have to share it again at some point. Okay, let's go back into the arm now that I really established the shadow area. Question about practice is, as a beginner drawing from references, do you think it's more beneficial to try to draw as many references as possible, maybe with minimal details or not as much accuracy, and practice session, or draw one or two as accurately as possible. I think it's about mixing and matching, honestly, because the idea when you copy something as close and as accurate as possible, you're training your eyes to be able to transfer over information from one side to the other. There's the other part which you're talking about, which is minimal details. Maybe it's about form and shapes. That's about interpretation, about being able to visualize past the details and transfer that information over. So both are highly important. So it's not about doing one or the other entirely and then coming to the other side, but marry them together again. One can lead into the other. Do many thumbnails, do a lot of sketches of the forms and the shapes of that reference, then also do a more accurately detailed piece after that. So there should be a series of drawings, not just one. And yes, using references is a good thing. It's a very important thing. So don't shy away from seeing something that you really enjoy or like and wanting to actually draw it or study it. But how you study it does matter, you know. Just only doing a copy is not good enough. It's an important one to do, but you got to add to it, which is, again, being able to visualize and interpret. There's the very vascular forearm right here. And you're not going to know everything about everything. I talk about this in my class today, the idea that, you know, some people who are going through education, you know, are worried, like, I don't know if I know enough of anatomy or proportion or perspective. And the thing is, as you begin your education, you're not going to. You're not going to know 100% of everything about anatomy. Even now, for myself, I don't know every single muscle and bone in the human form. I don't. I know enough to be able to convey, and all this stuff is just a stylist, you know, kind of version of it. So it's not necessarily true anatomy, but I'm able to give the impression, right, that it reads that way. And over time, you give it time to be able to accrue and accumulate, and gathering the data and information that you need to keep being able to convey and communicate that information in a confident manner, right? What's a good way to improve one's understanding of anatomy and learning perspective? As we just talked about, I'm a beginner and have a really hard time learning and draw these things. I would really love more feedback. Well, again, if you're not really taking any kind of classes for it, doing it on your own for those kind of primitive fundamentals is very difficult, very hard. And it's just flat out simply that. You need someone there to guide you. You could say, well, I have books and tutorials and videos, but that's not catered to you and how you're learning. Okay, it's more generalized. So the generalization is not, again, like I said, going to give you the specific information about the steps that you got to take to help you understand the equation or the formula of those methods. So if you're saying, well, I don't have the money to pay for these classes. Well, yeah, you don't have the money right now, but maybe you can build up to it. Build some funds, save for it for the next year. And maybe you can afford a single class when you build up to that part. You might think, well, I'm trying to learn right now. Well, there's that give and take, you know. So yeah, you can go on your own education and just start to learn on your own, get as much as you can, then save up, then take a class and start to get the comparison of what have I learned on my own this part, and now I can start to see what other people are doing in a classroom to get me further along, right? Sullivan, thank you for being patient about the book. The books were on a boat in China for months because the shipping companies in Asia were all bought out by corporations and they weren't able to move anywhere. So finally, they got them out of the harbor and are out to the distributors. So thank you for waiting. Okay, so I'm just gonna noodling too much on the head. I'm gonna go back to the hand here. Do I have any books that I would recommend for improving or illustration books that inspire me? I mean, there's so many. If there's one, I just recommended this earlier. It's actually a book that's related to how I teach in my dynamic sketching class. It's called Rapid Viz by Kurt Hanks. It's a great book. You can find it on Amazon, super cheap, still printed. It's a form of like visual communication drawing, and it's awesome stuff. If we can afford a single personalized class, which one would you recommend? Well, that's a tough question also because there's so much opportunity out there, information out right now. I would need a little bit more information about who you are. It's like asking, there's that funny joke by Tom Segura about, you don't ask people what you should eat. I don't know who you are. I can't recommend food to you. Same thing over here. Well, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? If you want to learn things like animation, I mean, there's, of course, well, just the basic fundamentals. Then obviously every instructor will tell you, oh, figure drawing or perspective. These are some of the places you can look at. But if you're looking for something more specific, just a bit more information would definitely be helpful. Yeah, in the archives, I think one of the recent ones disappeared because I didn't down or archive it. But I definitely will for this one, and I think I'm gonna go back and just kind of take a look at in my archives which ones I haven't uploaded just yet. I thought all of them were up there, but maybe not. So I have to go back and just make sure, and I'll try to on my Twitch stream upload more. For people that are joining right now on my Twitch stream, the older recordings from many episodes ago are still up as highlights, the full highlights. But I think there's a few pieces or few live sessions that are gone at the moment because I didn't download them, I didn't highlight them, so they kind of disappeared. Twitch has that weird clause where they don't let you keep your video up infinitely unless you highlight a section of it. So if I don't do that immediately after I finish up my live stream, I forget about it, and all of a sudden 14 days goes by and then the video is taken down. Question is, what questions are you most tired of hearing? Also, what rituals or small routines help you start drawing sessions? Do I listen to music? Well, there are no questions that I'm actually tired of hearing. There are questions that I expect, but I don't mind repeating answers to them because I know that the people that are asking those questions haven't heard my replies or answers. So why would I feel upset about answering a question for someone who's never heard the answer? So I don't get tired of answering questions of that nature. But in terms of rituals that I do, sometimes I'll go through and maybe watch or go through books, obviously artists that I like. Other times I'll watch some videos or documentaries of things that are related to the subject that I go for. But in most situations, I just jump in. Question here also is about how I can develop discipline as an artist when I get constantly discouraged by my failures, seeing others people grow. Well, okay, I can say this, but of course, that doesn't mean you're going to feel this way. But you should feel happy that the people around you are growing, especially if they are close to you, if they're friends, and of course, obviously you want them to succeed. Now, if you're talking about just generally social media, that's not a fair comparison because you're talking about people that you don't really know, and they could be in stages in life and growth that you have no context to. They could have been working 20 years developing their skill set, and you might be like a year in. How could you compare yourself to that, right? So that's the first thing you gotta let go. Comparison on social media. It's unrealistic and not practical. Surround yourself with real people, okay, that you know. Now, if you don't know them, develop those connections, going through classes and going through meetups like this online, and being able to share and reach out as much as you can. So I think that's a really important aspect to it, right? So how we interact and incorporate our social media platforms, it can be easily a pitfall, a place where it can be a very negative thing for you in terms of your growth and mental hindsight. But watch out for that a little bit, right? But in terms of developing the discipline for it, like I said, I think that encouragement, the right environment, the right people is really the crucial thing. I think most people can have that sense of self-discipline that can be developed over time, and it does take time, of course, and some people need more than others. But to stay consistent, being disciplined is one thing, but consistency is another, right? Because you can sit down and be disciplined for your first 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, but that consistency is everything after that. But from there, it's not only self-discipline, but I think it's about having that encouragement to keep that enthusiasm. Okay, I'm going to pull it down just a little bit here. Let's go into the leg portion. But I hope that makes sense. Sarah, I'm glad you were able to get the shipping for the Bible coming soon. The framed ink book, Earn 815, is also a great one. I would recommend that for sure. Question about burnout and keeping motivated. What routines do you have to combat those issues? Keeping myself always visually and mentally entertained. Like I said, reading, researching. For me, a lot of like other kinds of forms of hobbies and interests within creative or otherwise is a big factor. So if I'm not drawing, I'm doing something else that's relatively creative. I love photography. I'm a huge fan of like researching photos right now and wanting to actually go take photos. And right now it's kind of hard, but sometimes I'll go outside my backyard taking photographs of insects and whatever the case is. Sometimes I'll try to do like a zoo visit, which is right now more based on reservations. But before the whole pandemic thing, I was outside all the time, going to museums and whatnot, venturing and visiting all these places to get all that visual stimulus. So that's a huge aspect to it, which is stepping outside my door, which is what gives me a lot of that inspiration to create. This is why I don't burn out. Do I still teach at Cgma? I do. I don't necessarily teach a class. I do the mentorship there. I think, what are we, about an hour and 11 minutes in, so I thought it was a little bit longer, but it's amazing how much, especially on live stream sometimes, time goes kind of slow, actually. It feels like I've been drawing more than an hour, but I haven't. Just gonna zoom out a little bit here. Couple questions again I just missed real fast is, how do you decide what details to not draw in a line drawing? I'd like to improve my lines, but I'm struggling with that process. Well, I think for me, a lot of it is where I dictate the details is in groupings of shadow areas. So depending on the light direction, where the shadow kind of like Terminator or the core shadow would be, is where I really emphasize that detail. Areas where it transitions into the light, I tend to kind of leave it open. When you make mistakes, do you try to fix it or do you just adapt to it? How do you go about adapting? A lot of the times, as I make a mistake, which I do all the time, I'm able to adapt or problem solve it, which is basically incorporating it into the rest of the drawing where it doesn't feel like a mistake. So adaptation is a big part of that. But through that adaptation, it's correcting a mistake. But another part of it is I know that most people will not register those mistakes. So some that I know that are mistakes that might not be able to be adaptable, I can work still around it or just draw with it, and most people won't register the mistake. Now, if it's a really bad mistake and it's obvious, and what are some of the more obvious mistakes? Usually in proportion, or like perspective or anatomy. Those are the things that can stand out. If you can't correct those are the moments when you say, I gotta maybe start over. Yeah, right down in this area, there's a little bit more of this kind of surfacing sheen, so the ink is not grabbing the surface very well. So I'm actually pushing the ink around a little bit. So I'm gonna actually, once I let this kind of finish up and dry, I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of a spray, and then I'm gonna rework this area again to push these darks a bit more. Because it's very like strokey, you can kind of see it up close to the camera. See a lot of that kind of stroke right there, here on the camera too. You can see a lot of the strokes on that. So it's not like solid blacks. So I have to let that dry. And then I'll hit it with a fixative, a spray. And then it'll give it enough surface grip to be able to take that ink. I sometimes get this mental pull to like, oh, I want to get details in here or there, but in those situations, you got to remember to like just stop and not touch it, leave it alone. I do want to get some of the line weights pushed, but I don't want to push any more interior details. What is the book, The Dynamic Bible? That essentially is a collection of lecture notes of a class that I instruct called the Dynamic Sketching class. And that is a class based on how to increase your confidence in observational and visualization drawing. And that book contains 2 subjects in terms of what I generally cover in my class. And the subjects are based on things that we see in reference or an observation and how to break them down. And we focus heavily on things like form building, visualization, and also going into more further details about that subject. So it's basically a how to draw book using a method of form. It originates from Art Center, from my mentor and instructor, Norm Sherman, and it's derived from disciplines coming from things like architecture, industrial design, transportation design, and illustration together. I'm just punching all this in shadow, putting more emphasis of details in these areas. Let's go to the upper arm over here. I'm going to zoom in again on the camera. Male Nurse is asking, what am I drawing on? This is the PS5 faceplate. So I have a PlayStation 5 that I got on Walmart, luckily, online. And I drew on one side of the faceplate, and this is the other side. This is where the disc goes in. What gave me the idea to customize the plates on the PS5? Was it my sneaker kind of like drawing kind of thing? No, actually when the first images of the PlayStation 5 came out, and I saw a video of Sony breaking down the console of all the individual pieces, and they took the faceplates off, I was like, holy crap, that's gonna be awesome to draw on. And when I got the console in, when I bought it, the first thing I did is not hook it up and play it, but I wanted to draw on it. But that's just me personally. I mean, how could you not? It's just one big open wide canvas surface. I'm sure there are a lot of other people that are doing this too, but of course, you have to get the console. It's really hard to get right now. I got lucky. Really wanted to show that tooth more, so you can't really see it on Twitch. Sorry about that. Looks pretty good on Instagram so far. Did I design my own tattoo? I only designed one tattoo that's on my shoulder when I was like 17 years old, and I got it when I was 20. It was of this tiger, kind of a more of a graphical version of one. Very immature tattoo. A lot of my other tattoos were designed by my tattoo artist, who both of them were from Hawaii. One of them is trained classically in the Maori style. My chest plate I got when I was in New Zealand, and the tattoo work that I have is the traditional Maori, shape language. Of course, I'm very careful about what I'm putting on my body because I don't want to step on any toes in terms of the cultural thing. But I love the Polynesian culture. I resonate well with it in terms of the way they see nature, family, the water, ocean, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to have that also as storytelling on my body. So New Zealand I've been a couple times. I love it there. Went to Christchurch in 2010. Went back and went up to Wellington and Auckland. This is a couple years after that. The tattoo artist I met in New Zealand was someone I met on Facebook. He just reached out to me saying, hey, I like what you do for your classes and your teaching. And he said, I would like to learn from you one day. He was a tattoo artist that wanted to draw more. And I was like, hey, if I'm ever in New Zealand, I'll teach you. And this is in 2010. And in May of that year, I flew over there and I knocked on his door. I stayed with him and his family for 10 days. And I rented a car and I drove around Christchurch. That's how I got my necklace out there as well. And just explored New Zealand on my own. And then in the evenings, I stayed with him at his house and I would show him how to draw. And on the very last day is when he tattooed my chest. So we kind of did a trade of skill, essentially. The chest plate that I have on me, the full chest plate, I did the day before I had to fly back out to the US. It was in one sitting. It was about 8 hours in one sitting. It's pretty grueling. And then the flight back, oh my gosh, with a full chest tattoo, the next day flying back on an airplane, it was all swollen. It was like, oh my god, it was horrible. It was all sticky and like, you know, it was like scabbing and it was sticking to my shirt. It was like, it was so uncomfortable. But it was great. I'm glad I did it. Yeah, we're still connected. He still tattoos a lot out in Christchurch. His skill has gotten much better. And I like what I got now. But again, these tattoos, I don't design them. Those tattoo artists create them for me. So we get to know each other. They know my story, what I want to say about them. And they design it on me on the spot. What courses do I offer for people who do not know how to draw? Well, the thing is, I've had people from all walks of life that have even sometimes never drawn before, that just wanted to pick it up and see how it goes, and some people that are professionals trying to relearn their fundamentals again and wanting to draw further. So I've had all sorts, and if you haven't really drawn, the class that I teach, the dynamic sketching class, applies to everybody. Yes, having some early fundamentals like perspective and some early still life drawing can dramatically help you, but at the same time, I can show you how to draw things with a relative sense of confidence and understanding, and that will also then encourage you potentially to take those other further classes to, like I said, expand your understanding of perspective and whatnot. So, like I said, if you're interested in drawing, you can try to look into it, research it. I've been teaching that course now for over a decade. Started in 2010 and haven't stopped since. I think I've been to that village in Rotorua. I can't remember, again, it was so long ago now, but it sounds really familiar. I think I actually went to that village. Oh, I miss traveling. Okay, let's keep moving down a little bit out into this cloth area here to finish this out. We're almost done here, actually. I probably only got about, I don't know, 20-30 minutes left, really. I will do a little bit of fine tuning once we're done here because I gotta spray it and kind of touch it up just slightly. So I'll probably do that off camera and then I'll post it on social media. But in terms of the major meats of everything, it's pretty much there. I have to be careful here right now because as I continue to draw, more of it will smudge if I put my hand on top. So I'm going to grab a piece of copy paper, just regular printer paper, and what I'll do is just put it on top like this so that my hand won't interrupt it. Pushing line weights. What is Superani? Superani essentially is a group of artists like-minded that are interested in developing and telling stories, and it originated where the artists in Korea, Kim Jung-gi and Hyunjin Kim, started not hiring, but really bringing into the fold their students and creating art books and stuff like that. And so they labeled it Superani. So it originates from Korea with those artists out there. And now it's become international, where Kim Jung-gi and those guys have started to invite artists from all over, and it's not any kind of studio. You're not being hired. There's no contract. It's just people that like to draw and create with each other. We're just friends, and I joined the fold. What was it, like 2 years ago now? But I've known them, you know, for years before that. It's just people that I know. So. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out on the camera just a little bit so you guys can actually see it, the entire thing. And I'm gonna just continue to bump up his line weight a little bit around him, just a bit more. And once I get that done, the dragon, I'll probably hit a couple of small things or just refine the silhouette just a little bit. But again, I'm not really going to touch him too much with the pen. Most everything that I need to have is there. Yeah, it's a great tool. This Sakura PIGMA pen really is the only one I would consider even buying. I actually will be doing a YouTube review of the pen real shortly. Sakura sent me a bunch of them again, and I've been using this pen for years now. But I've actually never done a real proper review and explanation of how I use it. So I'll be posting that on YouTube probably in about the next, I want to say, week and a half or 2 weeks. So look forward to that. If you don't follow me on YouTube, it's just Peterhanstyle again. What are we about? Hour and a half in? Okay. Last 15 minutes. If anybody has any a couple of questions, curiosities, you're welcome to ask. I appreciate you guys joining in, and of course, like I said, it's been a while since I've streamed on Twitch, so it's always glad to have some people in here to converse on, and I'm glad to still have it be a relatively small channel. I don't want it to be, you know, lots of people in here conversing, because it just gets kind of crazy. And as you can see, there's a lot of questions that pop in, so I'm trying to always answer as many as I can, but if there's too many people, it just doesn't really become fun anymore. So we'll try to keep it small. Will I upload this live stream on YouTube? I might, but it'll be after, maybe like a week or so. Because I want to keep this as an exclusive to Twitch first. And most of the streams on Twitch I haven't uploaded on YouTube at all. I've only uploaded like 2 or 3. And there's several more, many more on Twitch. But this one I might. Because there's been a lot of traction on PS5 stuff. So I'm sure people would like to see that. Dragon, again, just a little bit of line weight play. Not gonna push heavy details, but it's more about just re-establishing and cleaning up. Edge control. Yeah, the extra paper is just so I don't smudge it with my hand. Alex, I'll take a look at it. Pacing wise, how do I go about drawing? Well, I don't know. I'm always working, so I'm always moving. I mean, when I'll stop is reading questions and stuff like that. But once I get an idea as to what the question is, I can keep going. But in terms of pace, or at least in terms of how many, how long I should be going on certain pieces, I would recommend, or I would do myself also, maximum 2-3 hours, and I'm usually working all the way through, and then I take a break, do something else. And if I want to keep drawing in that day, I'll see it through and work another couple hours if I need to. In most situations of things I'm creating, I can get it done within the 2 or 3 hour period, and then I'm done for the day. Or I'll just move on to something else. Like this one right now is what, an hour and a half. I'll probably work on for another 20-30 minutes, so this is a 2 hour drawing on this piece, and that's all I really need. On the PS5, what am I going to play? I've actually been replaying some of the PS4 ones because they've upscaled them for frame rate and stuff like that. So Ghost of Tsushima obviously is a fantastic game. The Last Guardian looks amazing on the PS5. But I do have the Spider-Man Miles Morales game. I actually even got NBA 2K because I like sports games. I like basketball and football and all that stuff. I'm actually a big sports fan, actually. Let's see. Are you going to watch the new Dune film once it's out? I mean, sure, why not? I mean, it's going to go on live or the streaming as it's also released in the theater. And who will go to the theater right now? So as it's live streamed, sure, I'll check it out. It looks interesting. I actually don't mind the David Lynch version. I know a lot of people hate it. I love the story of Dune. I think the documentary about that is also fantastic. The Jodorowsky's Dune is really amazing. If you've never seen that before, Jodorowsky's Dune, you have to see it. If you want to be an entertainment designer, it shows you so much amazing information about pipeline and process and developing a production. Great stuff. Thoughts on live Cowboy Bebop? I have no idea. I'm actually not a fan of them choosing that Korean guy from Harold and Kumar. I forgot his name. As being Spike. I think it could be someone else, honestly. I just don't see him in it. I think he's a great actor. I think he's cool, but I don't see him as Spike. He's just not lanky enough, and he's just not. I don't know. He just seems more. If you think of a shape, I think of Spike as being more kind of sharper, where he, as an individual, personality-wise, feels softer. But that's just because of the kind of like films and the way he comes off personality-wise. More of a, nonchalant jokester kind of guy. I guess Spike can be like that to a certain degree, but he does it intentionally as a front in a way. Where underneath he's actually very, very, like you guys don't know. So, not noir enough. That's a good way to put it. Demon Souls, I thought about it, maybe. But I didn't want to get too many games or else I won't play it. So, I'm pretty bad about that. If I don't finish one game, I won't come back to it. So if I buy too many of them and start a bunch of them, it's really hard for me to focus on it because I don't have so much time to play a bunch of games. I only play maybe like an hour at most or two a day sometimes. I mean, last time I fired it up was like 3 days ago, actually. So I don't get to play all the time. Let's go back up a little bit here. Just around some of the effects of the bolts. Line push. Thick to thin. Getting some variation in there. Taking the benefit of the brush pen to kind of move. Do I have a favorite actor that I like? If I think about it, there's a certain couple of films that I, as an actor, I really like them in, and I think only they can play them. One of my favorites is Jean Reno, actually. The film from The Professional, Leon. Only he could play that character. And most of the films with Jean Reno in them, I actually really enjoy. Ronin with Robert De Niro, Heat, also another great one. The inspiration for the blacksmith came from me studying Asian armor. So I was looking at a lot of Mongolian, Chinese armor, and I was just studying it just to practice drawing it. And just spontaneously, the character that I drew happened to be the blacksmith. And from that drawing, a lot of interest and curiosity came from people, and I just kept drawing him and started developing a world around that one drawing back in 2014. What are some artists you would recommend to watch and learn from for a non-drawer, I guess? I don't know. Maybe somebody else here can give more, I guess, advice to that. I don't actually really watch a lot of artists in their streams, so I don't really. I mean, of course, we could just say Proco, right? Proco is awesome in terms of what he does. Educationally, you know, it's all foundational figure work kind of stuff. Has a lot of great high quality video production. Do I ever feel insecure about artwork or painting? Sure. How, most people I think would. As I look at the work that I produce, I always think, not always, but I think most people usually think, I wish they could be a little bit stronger or better, or whatever the case is. But the difference is that it doesn't bring me down. I look towards, well, how can I make it better now? It's like, man, what did it? I feel like I could have maybe captured that, or I had the feeling of something. It didn't really come out exactly. But I don't look at it and be like, man, this is trash now. I don't think of it like this. I still like it, but I kind of want to now do the next drawing. I want to do it again. But of course, comparison's always going to be there, and there are people that are better, always. I'm sure there are people in here watching right now who are very competent in their skills and probably going to do a lot of things way better in this situation, right? Ghost Dog. Of course, saw that movie a long time ago. That's a great movie too, actually. Have I watched Demon Slayer? No, I have not yet. I did just earlier today saw a preview of it on Netflix. I thought about checking it out, but I want to just hold off for now. I'll come back to it in a minute. I'm not ready for a full series of anime right now. I just watched that film, Promare, from Trigger. That was pretty intense. So I kind of think it animated me out a little bit because it was just so much visual information. I know it's not obviously anything near close to what Demon Slayer is, but still, it's like I just wanted to back off a little bit from that. For your dynamic sketching artist reference homework, do you recommend art parents to be vintage master, or can they be current artists? It can be, okay, so I'm talking to someone who's a student at the moment, but you can look at whoever you want. It doesn't matter. We're doing an exercise right now of finding artist inspirations and doing verbal breakdown about their work. Gotta bring back my sheet. This part of the dragon, just gonna hit it up a little bit. So we are almost done here. This is the last, I would say, 5 minutes. If anybody else, again, has any last questions, comments, thoughts, things they would like to ask or share, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your own interests and curiosities. I hope that you guys were able to enjoy things that we did today. And I hope to be able to come back again real soon with the live stream. Now that I'm back into teaching on a regular cycle of a schedule, I'd like to be able to do so. Hopefully at least once a week, but once, maybe every other week would be potentially realistic. So I know it's not as much as some people would like to have, but that's what I can afford. And yeah, it is what it is. Have I watched Attack on Titan? Just the first season. That's it. I know there's a bunch of other seasons that came out, but I'm in no rush to really see it. It didn't really capture me for the first season, but I have to give it a chance. Okay. There we go. I think that's Pretty solid so far. I like it. I'm gonna spray it, and then from there I'm gonna kind of rework a couple of small spots. Do I teach how to color? Not necessarily, but I do a lot of color work with watercolors and digital stuff. But I don't necessarily teach it. I teach mostly in the sketching and the fundamental side of drawing. Do you have any advice for stronger gesture when drawing straight ahead, no underlay sketch? Do you mentally visualize the drawing first, maybe? I just have an idea. You have to rely upon your strength and confidence within the fundamentals of being able to draw the things in. And be able to just move and feel things out. And sometimes it won't go exactly the way you want to, but sometimes you got to be able to adjust and adapt to those situations. And this is where the mileage comes in, the experience. And you have to then obviously give that time in to be able to get to a level where you feel that. And how long will that take? There's no set time. It could take a while for some people. It could be immediate for others. For me, it took a while, years to get there. But yeah, give it some patience. You know, keep working at it. And you got to draw every single day to do this. So. Alright, I do apologize if I missed a bunch of questions here. I know I didn't answer all of them, but I hope you guys enjoyed this particular stream. And I was drawing on the PlayStation 5 faceplate cover, so this is going to go on the back of my PS5. The other side of it is already drawn on, so I'll post this on my Instagram later on. I just need to do a couple of small little bits of here once I kind of top coat it, and then we'll be good to go. So I will hopefully see you guys next time, and I will definitely post on my Instagram and stories of when I'll be doing another live stream. I would like to be able to do one hopefully next week, at the end of the week. If it doesn't happen next week, definitely for sure the week after that. So now that I'm on, again, a regular schedule, I'm hoping to come back to this, you know, as regular as I can. So if I do, hopefully I'll see you guys then, and we'll talk more. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.